Bonjour. Hi. Right. Hi, everyone. Let's start. So let me share my screen. Okay, here we were last time. I just have a few words about this. So this may sound somehow arbitrary and abstract. So why would you decompose this line into like this demand curve into an income effect and substitution effect, and you assume that okay, the income effect is that side, and then the substitution effect here is positive, here is negative. So why wouldn't you have a different income effect, or where does that come from? Well, it all comes from choice theory. It all comes from consumers maximization. So that's what defines what are ordinary goods, given goods, normal goods, um, inferior goods. Thing is, we haven't shown you any of this stuff yet. So I assume that in the following classes, when you're going to use calculus and see what's up with consumption, consumer choice and utility optimization, then you're going to understand better. So this is my take on it. So if you think it's somehow you don't see all the point in doing all these things, so it's not entirely your fault. It's because we lack many concepts that still haven't been introduced because you lack a mathematical background, but you will see them in the future. And one of these concepts, actually, you're going to see it in a few slides. So it's going to require a lot of explanation, but you're going to understand it slightly better, hopefully. Okay. Last sort of consumption I have to talk about is conspicuous consumption. What is this? Well, it's consumption for which the price seems to play a role. Why? Well, because all we've seen so far is that price matters as long as if it's more expensive, I can buy less of some good compared to other goods. So if it's more expensive, I'm going to buy less of it usually. But some goods may look like they don't fall into this category. So some of them we might call conspicuous goods. What are they? Well, snub appeal. So like a Porsche or BMW. So what's up with this? Actually, so they give you some explanations here. So it might be that, so it might look like the price is a feature. But so many competing theories might explain it. So in this case, it's why would I buy a consumption good that's easily that's easily seen by my neighbor? Well, the goal here is not to use my BMW because it's just so much better than some Volkswagen, normal Volkswagen cars, because anyways, I cannot go super fast on the road. So it all have to do with the fact that I want to show my neighbor that I'm richer. So so I feel good about myself, and my neighbor feels bad about himself. So that's the point of it. So in that case, I want to show to my neighbors that I have money. So that's a way to do it. And if the BMW costed less money, then that wouldn't do the case because it wouldn't serve as a signal to my neighbors. So that's one thing. But there are other sort of goods that would also violate this the standard theory that you could have. Oh, sorry. One of them is, imagine that it's a good for which nobody sees my car. So would I still want to buy that good that looks like it costs more for no reason? So one example would be higher education. So let me add that. So what's going on with higher education? Well, lots of stuff, especially in the US. That's a good example. In Canada, it's not so expensive. So I have an example of a college in the US. They said, well, we have quite a lot of money. We don't really need all that much. We're good. So let's lower tuition so that more students register next year. So we have a bigger student body. Well, what happened? Actually, fewer students applied to that school. And next year they said, okay, well, let's hike tuition again. And then more students applied to that school. So what's up with that? Usually we would say, oh, we should have some. So the only reason for a good to have a positive relation between price and consumption demanded, quantity demanded, would be if it's a given good, it's a super inferior good. Well, in that case, that's not an inferior good. So what happened? Well, part of it is that we don't have all the information on the quality of the good that we're looking at. Yeah, so yeah, higher education really, yeah, let me see, expensive higher education. It's a very good example of all these things. So what's going on? So one is I go to Harvard. I signal I'm smart or rich. So there's the signaling part. Second part is simply because there's a lack of information. So that's the signal part. So imperfect information. And quality. Yeah, let me put that there. So again, that's outside of it. Now we assume that, for now, we assume everything is known about the goods. There's nothing, no information you can get. In the real world, what happens is you don't exactly know what you're buying. So if it's more expensive, maybe better quality. And since education is so important for my whole future, I don't want to risk it and go to a crappy school. I'm going to save hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to that school, that school that costs a fortune, and that's what's going on. Other thing that that would be a feature of paying a lot of money that would sort of fall into this category too is networking. If it's expensive, only other wealthy people can go there. So it's like many, so it's like a club. Yeah, like many services for which there, it might be, you know, it might be exactly the same as the service beside it for all the features, except it costs 10 times more. And if it costs 10 times more, then you're sure that whoever buys into it are people who have a lot of money to throw away at the window. So perfect, I go and I have my other wealthy people with me, so I know that I can have good friends and network. So yeah, that's all sorts of reasons that have nothing to do with the theory we've seen so far, which says that price has nothing to do with anything other than making the good expensive, so limiting the quantity I can buy. Here, price is a feature. Questions about that? all good. Okay. Moving on to actually a very easy concept. Actually, this is, I think it might even be easier than total market value or what we've seen previously. Consumer surplus. So what's going on there? Very simple. So what value do I get from a good when I buy it? Well, it's sort of related to how much did I pay for it. If I didn't value the good, I wouldn't be ready to pay for it. I do value the good, so I accept paying a high price for it. But the thing is, I have to part with some of my money to get it. So in the end, what's going to determine whether I buy it or not? Well, do I get a positive surplus out of this buying that good? So what is the surplus? It's the, yes, it's, do we define it or? Okay, so surplus is difference between willingness to pay and actual price. So willingness to pay is the value I get from the good, and the surplus is the willingness to pay minus what I actually had to pay for it. So here they say if something is $1 a liter, so what's the surplus of buying first liter of milk? Well, here Moira, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, was ready to pay $6 for 1 liter, but only had to pay 1. So what's the surplus? 6 minus 1 is $5. Second, Moira was willing to pay 3, so the price of 1, so the surplus is 3 minus 1, 2. All right, and of course, where is Moira going to stop? Moira is going to stop when the marginal extra value gained from an extra milk of liter of milk is lower than the price. So here, Moira would be essentially indifferent between going away with 5 liters of milk or 6 liters of milk. Why? Because if Moira buys 6, then the extra value for Moira is $1, but the extra cost is $1. So it doesn't make any difference. And if you think that I need to go to the grocery store and spend time, or there are other things that are part of this opportunity cost of buying this milk, then I would just decide not to go there. I would really just go as long as I have positive surplus. All right, so that's easy to see. And they don't show you a graph, but I'm just going to show a graph quickly. So here's actually usually what, oops. We show it. All right, then I have. Okay, quantity, price. This is the actual market price. I'm going to label this P star. And this is the marginal willingness to pay, or the demand. And of course, the surplus is here.
Sure.
Yes.
I had a question about the midterms.
About what?
The midterms. Do you think it's possible to have access of all the midterms to see how it will look like? basically.
If I think what?
Do you think we can take a look at all the midterms just to get a sense of what it will look like?
Well, I've seen it and I commented on the questions and everything. So it's always multiple choice questions. So there are always 5 choices, A, B, C, D, E. And I would say about a quarter are math and most of them are understanding. Some of them are a bit more difficult, but most of them are feasible. I would say they're on the easy part of the questions you had for the MyLab. Yeah.
And what would be the best way to review for it?
What's the best way to study?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on you. It's difficult to say. I would say that most of what we've seen in class is quite good, although to get extra nuance, it's always a plus if you read the book too. But yeah, make sure that you understand the exercises, the core concepts, to really the core concepts. What is economics? All these. What is an elasticity? How you compute it? These kind of things. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Are we gonna have access to the old lab?
Yes, I think you should. You don't have access? Have you tried?
I didn't check yet. It was
we
a question.
I think we don't have access to the labs we've previously done, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, we do. I think you have to go, let me just get into this, but I think it's Gradebook. And in Gradebook, you can see all of the activities or labs that were due. So you can like access them through there.
Okay. Thank you.
There is the quiz
You're
function
welcome.
also in the study plan.
Sir,
Yeah.
is there a midterm practice exam available for me to? us?
No, I don't think so. No, sorry.
Okay.
But as I said, so the questions are like MyLab questions, but on the easier side. And yes, so some of them you need to know how to compute things. Maybe a third of them, or maybe half. It's hard to say exactly, but yeah, many of them are questions about concept, like supply, demand, how the market work, this kind of thing. All right, so let's continue. Any last question about the midterm, and then we can continue on.
Is it only multiple choice or also like short answer?
It's multiple choice. Yeah, it's all multiple choice. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And there is only one attempt?
Yes, but you can go back. So if you change your mind, you can go back to a previous question.
And it's on Moodle, right? It's not on phone.
Yeah, it's going to be posted on Moodle. Yeah.
So
Is chapter 1 through 5?
Yes, I think so. I believe so. Yes. That's what I said that last time. I'm not sure. Yeah, this six is nothing to that. I'm quite.
And one last thing, at what time do we have to access the quiz? I don't remember the test. Is it in the outline? I read it, I think.
So for logistics, it's going to become clearer as we get closer to it.
there won't be any fill in the blanks, right? Sir, there won't be any fill in the blanks?
There won't be any formulas?
Fill in the blanks.
I'll fill in the blanks. Yeah, it's possible there are filling the blanks. Yeah.
Will it be this Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Going back to what we're talking about. Yeah. So I know that you're all stressed out about what's the midterm that's coming, but imagine that you were concentrated in that class. Would you have a question about consumer surplus? No? Okay, all right. So this is, so the surplus for the first unit bought is the difference between the marginal willingness to pay and the price, then the surplus for the second one, third one, and then we stop when the market price equals the willingness, marginal willingness to pay. So here. All right. Well, actually, the graph is there. So here's a discrete version of what I've just been saying. So here the surplus for the first unit would be 6 minus 1, so 5. Then, so Moira's consumption, the whole consumption would have brought this total surplus. So 5 plus 2 plus 1 plus 0.6 plus 0.2. So I think that's quite an easy concept to understand. All right, so this is just so the difference between the total value that consumer pays on all units. So that's the actual sum of the light blue area here, consumed for a product, and the payment that they actually make to purchase it. So it's so it shows, of course, the market dimensions evaluation. So yeah. So yeah, that's just saying the same thing. Okay, so this part is tricky. By the way, so this still has to do with the surplus. So let me put that into a box. So this is still about the surplus, and this is something completely different. Okay, so don't think that this under the curve, this all relates to this graph here or this graph here. Now, this is a completely different graph, but it's a fundamental graph. That's the sort of graph I would have liked to start with. So what's going on here? So since they just put it in one box here, I assume they're not going to spend all that many exercises on it, but just to be sure, I'm going to explain what's going on there. So you may remember that that we've seen the budget line, right? So this is the budget line. So just so that you don't get confused, I'm going back a few slides. So here on this graph, I have quantity consumed here, Q, and price, P. So you see that here what I have is quantity of one good and quantity of the other good. So I'm back like 4 classes before prior, where I was talking about budget set and budget line. So here are some budget lines. So if I have a higher budget, I'm here. If I have a medium budget, if I have a small budget, I'm here. Yeah. And then we haven't talked about this thing there, which is a fundamental concept. Have somebody heard about the name of these curves? No? All right, so these are indifference curve. So yeah, they don't even, yeah, okay, so these are indifference curve, and they are the fundamental object in microeconomic theory. Indifference curve. because the first time you have seen budget lines, all you have seen is what can be consumed. So for instance, if my budget is such that it's that one here, for instance, then I can consume everything that's inside this triangle there. So all these combination of food per week and clothing per week. But then we haven't said what I am going to decide. So how should I know what I am willing to decide to consume? Well, it has to do with my tastes. And to describe the taste in this two-dimensional graph, where we use what we call indifference curves. So an indifference curve, yeah, I'm just going to say here. All the combinations of goods, of two goods, which yield the same utility. All right. So for instance, if I buy consume a big quantity of clothing and a low quantity of food per week, I would be, say, for instance, here, then I could also have the same level of happiness or fulfillment or utility or life satisfaction if I did consume a large quantity of food and a small quantity of clothing. So that's what we mean by indifference curve. And all these combination of clothing and food give me the same combination of happiness. And of course, then what can I say? Here, this indifference curve gives me more happiness than that one. Why? Well, because simply if I compare point B and point C, I have more food and more clothing per week, and the fundamental assumption of consumption or consumer behavior is that more is better. So we always like consuming more of any good. So it means that C is higher than B and B is higher than A. And of course, by transitivity, C gives me more happiness than A. And then what you see is that the optimal choice, so what I do actually choose, will be a point. It might be point A, point B, or point C, where the indifference curve is tangent to the budget line. And let me explain in a very easy way why this is the case. So imagine I am, okay, let me try and draw some other curve. All right. So imagine that my budget is that one. So I'm rich and I decide to consume here. Okay. So is that an optimal choice? Yes, no, why? Can somebody have an intuition about this? So my budget line is this green line there. All right. So
Well, there's a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say there's a second intersection between the indifference curve and the budget line. So
there's this one too.
Yeah.
Yes, I could be there, but imagine that I did choose this one. So let me even zoom here. We see better. So I'm consuming here. And what I'm saying is my budget line is this one. So I can consume any goods that's within this triangle there, especially if I spend all my budget, then I can consume any point on this budget line. So then my question is this a good choice for me? Is this, or could I be better off? Could I make a better choice?
I would say you would be better off like on the red line where it crosses there, because you spend less money and are still as happy as you are on that point.
So what point are you talking about? This point or
Like
that
where
point?
the blue, yeah, at that point.
Okay, yes, but do I care about money? You're in the right
I do.
direction, but
You would be better off on point T, like if the graph passes through C, because you would be more happy with the combination of the two good, with that combination of the two goods.
yes, exactly. So this is exactly the point. So if I'm here, what I can do is I can go anywhere I like on this budget line and spend exactly the same amount of money. So let's go right until C. And then how do I know that C is better? When C lies on this indifference curve there, which gives me a higher happiness than this blue line there. So I know that, so because I3 is better. So the previous comment was almost, yeah, it was almost there. So what she was saying is, oh, if you went consume here, you would be as happy as before and save money. So my question is, why should I care about saving money? Well, because if I save money, then it's possible to just spend more on the two goods and reach a higher level of happiness. So so my optimal choice is C, and I see that if I go past C through this point there, then I'm back on my original indifference curve. Here I'm spending too much on clothing and too little on food. So this is why the optimal choice would be a tangent point between my indifference curve and my budget line. All right. So the point is consumption choice. Tangent. Indifference curve. And budget line. Yes, Mr. Ryan.
I understand the green budget line and the yellow indifference curves, but could you re-explain the red income consumption line? I don't really understand.
Oh yeah, okay. No, so just ignore that for now. But so I'll tell it in 2 minutes. But yeah, that's another extra concept. Yeah. For now, just ignore it. All right. Lastly, yeah, consumption choice is the tangent between indifference curve and budget line. All right. So that's the optimal thing I can do. Now, question is, what do these indifference curve represent? Well, they actually represent levels of utility. So, and as I was saying, this is a higher utility, this is a higher utility, this is then this, and this is the lowest level of utility I can get. But this represents a concept, and we can know something about these points also. So does somebody remember what is the slope of a budget line? It goes back a long time, so I won't blame you if you don't remember it.
It's negative?
Yes. Do you remember or not?
It's always negative.
Yes, but so what is the exact value of if I have, oh yeah, there's no, so imagine that the price of food is P1 and the price of clothing is P2. So what is the slope of this budget line? I don't remember. Yeah, so that's advanced. So I'm just going to go briefly over to tell you briefly what they are. So if you have a budget,
Isn't it like 0.5?
yeah, it's sort of 0.5, yes. But so budget line. So I have P1 times, so let's see, it's, I don't know, it's X1 or Q1, yeah. X1, say, plus P2 times X2 equals M. So this is my spending on good 1, this is my spending on good 2, and this is my total income M. So this is a budget line. And the slope of the budget line is, so how do I find it? Well, I just rewrite it this way. So P2x2 equals M minus P1x1. And then I can just write x2 is M divided by P2 minus P1 divided by P2 times x1. So what is the slope between, what is the slope of a budget line? It's minus P1 over P2, all right? Because it's the quantity of good 2 I have to sacrifice if I increase the quantity of good 1 by 1 unit. So if I increase by 1 unit, then I must decrease x2 by minus P1 over P2, all right? And then what is this equal to here? So let's just go back to what we were talking about last week. So this is just to close the circuit. We were talking about this optimal decision there. Px divided by Py is equal to the marginal utility of consumption X divided by the marginal utility of consumption Y, right? So since the slope of my budget line is minus P1 over P2, what should be the slope of an indifference curve? Well, it should be minus marginal utility 1 divided by marginal utility 2. Yeah, so this is as far as I'm going to go. I'm sure the exercises are not going to be as difficult, but I'm just telling you what you're going to learn in the future. So,
sure.
Yes.
How do we calculate marginal utility?
So it's if you know calculus, it's the derivative of utility with respect to the consumption of one.
No,
good.
I don't know. I don't
know. so yeah, that's why I don't want to go too far, but so.
But it's not something we should know right now, right?
Not exactly. Well, you should kind of know it in terms of discrete changes. So if you increase by 1 unit of good, how is your utility changing? So this is what we were describing here. Yeah, so this is your total utility, and the marginal utility is by how much your total utility increases when you increase the consumption of 1 unit of juice. So here you say you are consuming 1 unit of juice, 1 bottle, and you go from 1 to 2 bottles. So how much did your utility change when it went from 30 to 50? So what was your marginal utility it's 20, right? So 20 was the extra utility you gain from going from 1 to 2. So that's the concept of marginal utility. Then if you just use derivatives, so it's just a derivative, but yeah, you don't have to think about this. So in discrete terms, that's what it is. All right.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So the slope of, yeah, one budget line, and then so the slope of one indifference curve is minus marginal utility 1 divided by marginal utility 2. And when you're at the optimum, then it's a place where marginal utility 1 divided by marginal utility 2 equals minus P1 over P2. So mu1 over mu2 equals P1 over P2. So that's the whole theory behind this curve. I'm sure it's going much farther than we have to, but it's for you to make some links in your head that are going to be useful later. All right. Oh yeah, and then finally, what is the income consumption line? So that's the line that describes how much I consume of either good when my income goes up. So if I'm poor, I consume at A, then I'm richer, I consume at B, and then I'm even richer, I consume at C. So if you trace a line that unites all these points, it gives you the income consumption line. And what does that tell you? It tells you that the richer I am, well, actually, it doesn't make so much sense in reality, because what it tells you here is the richer I am, the more in proportion I spend on food per week. You see that I'm going to spend much more on food per week if my income increases, whereas it looks like I don't spend all that much more on clothing per week, but that's kind of the reverse in reality. So in reality, if you're poor, you may spend more on food and less on income and less on clothing. All right. So yeah, I'm telling you all these details. I don't know how hard the questions are in my lab on that, but this is all the material, and I'm sure more than you need to understand all of it.
Professor?
Yes?
Will we need, oh, we can
go for it.
Oh, will we need the budget line formula for the test?
No.
Okay.
Well, actually, so actually, yes, in a sense that we have already covered it in the first part of the class. So as since we have covered it, yes, it's part of the material. So all the detail, the intricate detail of this graph, you don't need them, but it's good that you understand the concept of budget. And yeah, it might actually be good if you review what the concept of a budget set is and all of this. Yeah.
Sir, for the exam on Sunday, it's just chapter 1 to 5, right?
Yes.
So
But
this is not on the exam.
Yes, because it was in chapter 1. So the indifference curves are not on the exam in the exam, but the concept of budget, yes, it is. Yes, this
Okay, but
you need to understand it. Yeah.
chapter 6 as a whole isn't on the exam now, right?
Nope. Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, quick question.
Yeah.
What does it mean if the indifference line is below your budget line? Because what I'm trying to understand here is how point C is the better point, but your indifference line, your blue indifference line, it's below your budget line in comparison to the oranges line. So what does that mean? What does that mean that, because from what I'm seeing, yes, like you're saying it's tangent, but in this case, the budget line technically is not tangent to the blue indifference line.
Okay, so I have an infinite number of budget lines. What you have to, so let me try and give me 1 second. Okay, let me see if I can paste this. All right. So I don't want to spend too much on this, but so this is a topographical map, right? What it shows is different lines that show how high the terrain is. So what you have to understand is that indifference curve are exactly as this. So, but here the terrain is the altitude. Here, indifference curves show the how happy you are. So the higher you get, the higher you are. The farther to the right and up you are. So here you're happier, but you have a infinite number of these lines because I could draw an infinite number of altitude lines, right? So here, what does that mean? It means, so on the blue line, maybe my utility is, I don't know, 10, and the orange line here, my utility may be 11, and here it might be 10, and here it might be 6. So yeah, that's what it means. So the indifference curve tell me what I wish I could consume. So I wish I could consume here or even here or here, but then the budget line tell me what I can actually consume.
Okay, so basically like the blue line, you're not maximizing utility.
If my budget is this one, I'm not maximizing my utility, yes.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Other question? No? Okay, so again, so I'm kind of shocked because we haven't discussed this since like 4 chapters, and then they come up with this graph here that introduces so many new concepts. So I don't know how detailed I should go into, but here it is. Here are all the concepts you need to understand it. And really, what's nice about it is, again, that we go back to what we just learned previously. So yeah, let me just, just a reminder at optimum. So marginal utility 1 divided by marginal utility 2 equals P1 divided by P2. And you see this exactly in this graph because the slope here is minus mu1 divided by mu2. And the slope of this indifference of this budget line is minus P1 divided by P2. So of course, if you're at point C where they are tangent, then you're going to get that mu1 divided by mu2 equals P1 divided by P2. So when you see optimization, it's going to become so much easier. But yeah, right now that's the most I can tell you. Okay. All right. So much simpler concept. And we're done with consumer theory. So paradox of value. So yes, what makes the value of something? Well, at this point, you already have so much information. So here there's the famous paradox of diamonds and water. So why are diamonds expensive and why is water cheap? Does that mean that diamonds are so precious and water isn't worth anything? So what's your point of view?
Depends on the circumstances.
Yeah, that's good.
Like, for example, if you're in a desert and you're like dying of thirst, but you have a whole church trove of diamonds, you're not really going to care, you just want water.
Oh, that's an awesome answer. So willingness to pay. Depends on circumstances. In dessert, what 1 drop water is worth more than diamonds. So why in general are diamonds more expensive than water though?
Because they're harder to find.
Yes, exactly.
More scarce.
And because water is everywhere, people take it for granted. So water is invaluable, but it is.
It is also extremely common and almost free to get. Yes. And by the way, diamonds, so it's not true that it's super rare. So why is it that people say, oh, when I get married, I need my diamond ring and it's going to be the best thing ever? Well, it's because of a corporation called the Bears that decided that they would mostly buy all the diamonds available from that were newly mined, and they just store them. So they store the diamonds and create this artificial scarcity on the market, which convinces people that, oh, diamonds are so rare and so valuable, but in fact they're not that rare. So it's just that one monopoly that controls the price. So we're going to see monopolies in the future, but still they are obviously more rare than water. Yeah, and this has been the importance of supply and demand has been known by people much earlier than Adam Smith even. Yeah, so that's the gist of it. So water has a plentiful supply, so low price. Diamonds are scarce, so yeah, high price. Yeah, so exactly. So the marginal value of water will be low, whereas the marginal value on the last diamond bought will be high. So that's why the price of a drop of water will be low and the price of the last diamond would be high. Yeah, so that's a lot of text to say the same thing. Yeah, here it is. So here we can see it. So if you have a very large supply, so you are here. So it means that at the price of consumption, then even though you have well, actually, it looks like there is an equal demand of diamonds and water. But yeah, so in a way, we can't compare the quantity of diamond with the quantity of water. So, but you could even have a demand curve that would be like very small, because in the end, who cares about diamonds? I don't need wood diamonds to live. It's dictated entirely by its supply. So here they have a very short supply of diamond. So that's why the price can increase a lot. Whereas we have a large supply of water. So then the marginal, the last unit bought of water would be paid a very low price, whereas the last unit bought of diamond would be paid a very high price. All right. So that's not a huge paradox. So that's it about chapter 6. Last question remaining about this.
Yeah, what makes I forgot what makes a good have like higher marginal value?
So the marginal value is how much people are willing to spend on it. So it's described by the demand, by the entire demand. And then the market price, how much do people actually spend on it in general in society? It's a combination of what is the demand, what is the supply, and where is the intersect of the supply curve and the demand curve. So if it's here for water, it means that the market price is low. And if it occurs here for diamonds, so the price of diamonds is high.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, so we can already start the next chapter, chapter 7.
Actually, sir, I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
For the surplus in chapter 6, why is it different from the surplus in chapter 5? Because in this one, you just subtract the demand point, how much the customer is willing to pay, minus how much the seller is willing to sell.
Right.
But in chapter 5, it's like the formula is different.
Yeah, okay.
You
So
do the base time the. Yeah, well, why is the formula different?
So yeah. So here you have consumer surplus. Let me put that here. And what do we also have? Well, they don't talk about it, but I can already introduce it. So you have also a producer surplus. Yes. So what is the surplus for the producer? Well, it's the difference between how much they received from consumers who bought the good and how much something costs for them. And so the total value generated by the market is, of course, the sum of the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. So, and for each unit, it's how much a unit cost yielded as value for the consumer minus how much it costs to produce for the producer. But then you see that there's just this intersect, there's this interaction between the two that goes on with the price. So for me, as a consumer, I don't care about how much profit the firm does. That's their side. All I care is my marginal willingness to pay different from the market price? That's going to dictate how much, if I buy the good or not. For the producer's perspective, they don't care about how much happiness the good creates for consumers. All they care about is, do I make a profit margin on this unit or not? And what's the profit margin? It's the sales price minus how much it costs to produce, so the marginal cost. All right.
So, sir, the area shaded in green, that's what people are willing to.
So the green is the total, it's the consumer, total consumer surplus, yes.
And the red would be how much firms are willing to put money into their.
So how they get, what they get from the trade. So from each unit, but so imagine that unit, for instance, they got this price from the consumer, P star, so let's say $5, and it costs, let's say let's say this is what, $1, $2, $3, $4. So they get an income of $4, but then their marginal cost was like $1.8. So the profit margin on that unit would be 4 minus 1.8. And the total area in red is the total producer surplus. Or we just say the producer surplus. But so I guess what they didn't want to introduce this concept of producer surplus before introducing producers and firms. So that's what we're going to talk about now. So you see that what we were talking about is just the sum total of the two. Okay, so let's start next chapter. So this chapter is quite easy, in my opinion. So we're mostly describing stuff. So we just describe what firms are. So what sort of business organization you have, the difference between accounting profits and economic profits, but that's really not how that, well, it's important, but it's not like the greatest stuff. So the hardest thing we've done so far is by far the graph I just showed you with the budget lines and the indifference curve. Compared to that, it's very easy. We don't have to worry about it. Yeah, and the difference between fixed cost, marginal cost, and all these things. All right, so what sort of firms can you encounter? So imagine you have a new idea. What are you going to do about it? Well, maybe if you like risk, so you say, oh, I'm just going to drop out of Concordia, like Bill Gates says, or Peter Thiel says, so education isn't worth it, and I'm just going to start my business right away. And if it's a small idea, a small business, then you might say, oh, I'm going to start by myself. So in that case, you would just be someone with their own firm, and you act in your own name. So what you're doing is you're making your product at home and selling it to other people. So what's important about this is, yeah, let's just see, it's individual liability. So
what's the name of this chapter?
The name of this chapter, yeah, producers in the short run. So here, when you go to the bank, you tell the bank, oh, please give me money. And if I go bankrupt, then you can seize my house and stuff like that. So I'm the sole responsible of this organization.
But that's if you ask for credits.
Yeah, if you go to the bank, yeah. Or you know, it could also be. So suppose that I want to sell computers, so I go to one supplier and ask, oh, please send me CPUs, and please send me screen, and please send me power supplies and stuff like that. But then if I tell them, oh, by the way, I can't pay you right now, I'm going to sell my computers and pay you in the future, then they might say, okay, yes, but what if you go bankrupt, if you don't pay me back? And then, okay, well, if I don't pay you back, then you can seize everything I own, and I'm borrowing in my own name. That's what it means. So it's the smallest sort of firm you can get. Ordinary partnership is same as single proprietorship, but it's a group of people together. That are jointly responsible. Liable. So if it's yeah, just finish my sentence. So if it's a very good idea and I feel that I cannot do it by myself, then I'm just going to go to see my friend and say, oh, let's start a business together, so we can all sign on the paperwork that we are responsible together. It's exactly like signing up for an apartment with roommates. So all the roommates are on the bail agreement. Yeah. Question?
Yeah. Do you get taxed more for an ordinary partnership compared to a single property, or the opposite, or what?
I'm not a lawyer. I have no idea.
Okay.
But it matters a lot. That's the right question. At the end of the day, what should I choose? Should I choose 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? It all comes to taxes and risk. So what's the riskiest, the least risky option for me? What's the tax I'm going to have to pay for each? So yeah, so to know the detail, you should go to a law class, business law.
Okay, sir.
Limited partnership, what's going on there? So there's general and limited. So some partners may have limited liability. So it means if the business goes belly up, then you cannot, I can't lose more than say $10,000, for instance. But one general, one has general. So we go after that person at the end to get the most we can get to get reimbursed. And so I'm always talking about what happens when the business fails. So it looks like I'm being not very optimistic about the prospect of the business. So do you know more or less what's the likelihood that a firm succeeds after, I think it's 5 years or 2 years, something like that? If we start a new business? I'm not going to write it down because I'm not sure about the numbers, but it's more or less 20%. So about 80% of new firms fail in the end. So why do people still start new firms? Well, at some point they are optimistic. And if they are not so sure, then they can try and limit their liability by going into this kind of arrangement where they say, okay, maybe it succeeds, maybe it doesn't. But if it doesn't succeed, at least I'm not totally liable. Yeah, but that's the thing. It's very nice to have entrepreneurs, people who say, I'm willing to put my house on the line, I'm willing to go to my family and friends and ask them for money and have them put their trust in my genius. And it still happens, even though most of the time it fails, because starting something new and better than what's already out there is just so difficult. But still we have people who are, so finding a job is easy in a sense, but starting a business, that's hard. All right, so that's limited partnership. Now a corporation. So yeah.
Monsieur?
Yeah.
Can you repeat what is a limited liability?
So if I'm limited, my membership in the partnership is my liability in a partnership is limited. It means that if the enterprise fails for some reason, then they cannot seize my house and my dog and my child. They cannot seize everything. So it's there's a limit to my engagement. Of course, it comes with the fact that if the business succeeds, I will not get as much benefit as the person who has a general liability. Maybe you're not satisfied with my answer and you would like more specific legal detail. Sorry, I'm not the person to answer that. So you would have to talk to a lawyer about this. This is just general points about it. Yeah, so the most important one is corporations, public and private. So corporation is then it's everybody's involvement is limited. So corporation is, let's see. Personal profit without personal liability. So it's an abstraction. Do we say moral person? Can we say that in English? In French, they say personne morale.
Legal person.
Yeah, okay, legal person. So in French, you have moral person, which I find ironic because there's fewer entities that are less moral than than firms. But okay, legal person. So it means that when you go to the bank, you don't borrow in your own name, you borrow in the name of this. So if it's, I don't know, Starbucks, then I take a loan as Starbucks. And then the firm, when the Starbucks goes bankrupt, then the firm seizes Starbucks, but it doesn't seize the property of the employees or even the shareholders. So that's, yeah. And it can be private or public. So private means owned, not publicly traded. And public means I can buy shares. If I want to. And I have the money. Yeah. And now public firms can be owned by individuals or states, doesn't matter. But then state-owned means, you know, that they're mostly state-owned. So yeah, so this is like property of state. So for instance, yeah, a good example is in the US, you had Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. For providing housing in the Quebec. Would have SAQ. What's in English? Quebec alcohol. I don't know. It's SAQ. Hydro-Quebec. Sort of things. And people always talk about, oh, we should privatize Hydro-Quebec or SAQ. maybe not. Thing is, Hydro-Québec provides a lot of income for the state, so it's extremely valuable. It's like a tax source. So instead of taxing electricity, you just own the corporation and you set the electricity price and you get the profit out of it. So it's more or less the same thing. And if we did choose to privatize it, then the cost would just be extremely high because it's just such a valuable corporation. And then the non-profit organization, so anything. So yeah, I don't have examples in mind.
UNICEF.
Yeah, UNICEF is good. International. Or yeah, many examples. Yeah, so the goal here is you should make a profit. Yeah, something that they didn't add is cooperative. So I don't know whether that fits in there. That's a good question. So co-ops, like Desjardins. So the goal is to provide services, goods and services to member without generating a profit. So when they do generate a profit, paid back to the members. It's paid. So yeah, I don't know where it would fit exactly in this, but I wouldn't say it's a corporation. It's sort of a non-profit organization, I guess, but its goal, so non-profit organization have many different sort of goals. Here the goal is really to provide services. So it's an alternative to banks, for instance. All right, so we're over time, so we're going to continue here next time. Last question before we go.
Yes, sir. This weekend I was watching a video and they were talking about it's not quite an airline, but it's a travel club where like you become a membership, you become a member and you gain access to vacations, to different destinations and whatnot. Where would you put, like, where would you classify a company like that?
The technical word, it is a scam.
No, sorry, it's a legit thing. It's a legit company. It's not a joke.
Yeah, no, but it really happens often that they say something like, oh yeah, you pay in advance and then you get some price in the end, but then they don't pay it. So, I don't know. Yeah, it's sort of like a co-op, I guess. So they buy in bulk and share the. Yeah, so the thing about this is it looks purely a buyer's club in a way. So it's not like they take over the management of this airlines or this. So I don't know how you would say, but in a way, yeah, maybe like a co-op.
If I were to send you the YouTube video, would you be able to clarify?
Yeah, sure. But so one thing I have to say though is be careful that so all these organizations where they say, oh, send us money and then you get this or that in the end. And the worst is if they say something like, and if you recruit new members, you even get more benefits, then beware of these type of things.
Well, sir, it's a video about a company that went bust back in the 90s. So
all right. So, but you can send me the link. I'll happily watch it. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
All right. So Thanks a lot, everyone, and I see you in 2 days.
Professor,
Yes.
I have a question about last lab. There was something I still don't know how to answer. Can you
Okay.
help me with that?
Yes. So I'll end the stream right here and then connect
you.
back in 5 minutes. All right. So thanks, everyone.